Let me introduce you to Fred Williams. He's my good friend living in Prague for a long time, so he even learned a little bit of Czech, but he's American by being born. So, without delaying you, Fred's talk. Enjoy.
Tak moc děkuji vám. I'm very happy to be here with the Agile 100 today, but I'm not going to be completely alone here for the presentation. I have a co-presenter, Queeny the dog, who has joined us today and will be, as usual, supervising all of our work. So if you have any questions for Queeny, be sure to send them to Zuzi or Sohrab so that we can make sure that she answers them properly for you. When Zuzi asked me to come and speak here, I asked her, well, what kind of talk do you want? And she said, well, it's kind of the middle of the day, kind of the middle of the thing. So maybe it would be nice if you did something a little bit light. And I said, well, all right, that sounds like fun. And whenever Zuzi asked me to speak at Agile Prague or another event, I always feel like I have a great deal of liberty and freedom to really say something new and interesting that I haven't seen before elsewhere. So I've had this idea for a talk for a long time. You're the very first to see it. I also hope that you'll give me feedback and let me know if I should continue and develop this talk further. So the very first thing before we start, and to make sure that you understand, this is going to be interactive. There's going to be 7 poll questions. And before we even start the talk, I want you to find a piece of paper nearby, any kind of paper, big, small, doesn't matter, but you're going to draw a picture on it. So ideally, something big enough you can draw a picture on, and get yourself a pen. Pens usually show up better on camera than pencil. And I would like you, please, to, and just do this really quick. Don't worry about how good the picture is, right? This is just an exercise. Break things up, make it a little bit interactive. Draw a picture of Agile. What do you picture when you picture Agile? Okay? So, just like 1 minute, less than that even. Draw a picture of Agile. And I'm got my all right, like 5 more seconds. Finish your picture of Agile. So this is going to require everybody who's got your cameras off, turn your cameras on. Everybody turn your cameras on. Everyone get your camera on and show your picture. Yeah? Uh-huh. Zuzi, I can't see yours very well. Kind of blends into the, oh, that's nice, Stanislav, I get that. Huh? I like the loops, Dominique. Yeah, Leticia, you get the classic iterative spiral. What's that? Roman. Oh, you're like bouncing on a ball on dangerous waters. Oh, and walking up those steps there. That's nicely drawn. And I can't, Annette, I can't really see yours. Oh, it's like a maze almost, like with the loops and So really cool. Um, all right, so obviously I asked you guys to draw a picture. So, well, when I think of Agile, of course, I think of my dog Queeny, my dog Queeny, who you just saw. And when you think of Agile, um, unfortunately, a lot of times we think about the ways that we're not quite doing Agile as well as we should, or the frustrations of doing Agile. And that's part of why we do these conferences like the Agile 100, is to talk about some of those frustrations. And I just wanted to show you guys a potential quick scenario of what it can sometimes feel like uh, working in an agile environment when you kind of get frustrated because it's not quite working as well as it should. I'm not going to ask the poll question of if any of you have ever felt like you're in that similar situation, because I think everybody who has done Agile at one time or another has felt something like that, where you just want to get on with the job and you're ready, you're prepared, you're willing, and then you feel like you're being put into a straitjacket. You feel like you like Hannibal Lecter costume, and you have no voice, right? And you're trying to be an agile person like Queenie the dog is, and it really becomes a desperately uncomfortable situation. And you're leashed, not just leashed, but muzzled and smothered. And well, you know, that's what we want to talk about today, is what are some of the situations that generate that feeling, and maybe some ways that we can reduce that feeling, that we can make things better. And the intention of this is that this is um, both for managers and business owners who are interested in making agile work better, but also for all of you out there who are not in a position of power, right? Who are perhaps in a situation where you don't have a lot of voice, you don't have a lot of ability to change things, and maybe look at it from your perspective, some ways that you might be able to increase your ability to improve things. So I'm going to go on now with the slides about unleashing agility. Um, Let me see here. So we've drawn the picture of Agile. We've seen the video. We're going to talk about 7 ways that we hold back our agility, and we're going to have 7 poll questions while we're doing that. And then we're going to talk about 7 suggestions for improvement. So it's going to be 1-to-1 all the way through. I'm going to end with a radical suggestion. And after about 30 minutes, then Zuzi and I are going to have some questions and discussions. So if you have questions, please share them with us so that I can attempt to answer them. So the first problem is that we don't get enough training, right? Just like a dog who wants to do the right thing but hasn't been shown what the right thing is, we're going to go off in all kinds of different directions. We're not doing what it is that our managers want us to do. And the manager's frustrated, we're frustrated. And it's not because it's a bad manager, it's not because it's a bad person or a bad doggy. It's because you haven't gotten the training that you need. Right. And this could be, as any of you who are dog owners know, that the dog training isn't primarily only for the dog, it's also for the owner to know how to work properly with their dog. So the first poll question I got for you, and we'll just take like 15 seconds for this, is do you get all the training you need? And it's going between the yeses and the nos. Nos is up ahead. We've got 63 to 37. We're counting down. We got 5 more seconds. Oh, 3, 2, 1, and end of polling 66 to 34. We do not get enough training. And that's no surprise, right? Frequently in an agile environment, stop share results. Stop share results. All right, can I close this now? Thank you. Um, So frequently in today's job market, actually, training is explicitly something that companies are not very interested in providing because they expect you to have all those certifications and experience up front. And they think that it's a waste of their time and a bad investment on their part because the more you get trained, the more likely that you're just going to leave and go to the competition. But this is really short-term thinking, and we all know that. It's only through having the training you need that you're really going to get the trust and the cooperation between management and workers to ensure that you're all going in the same direction and that you have a long-term, happy, productive relationship. Not getting training is something that is going to put barriers in front of you and around you and stop you from being happy and being a truly agile person. So the second problem that affects our agility, I don't know why my slides are, there we go. The second problem that stops agility is interruptions. This is also known as shoulder tapping, in the sense that you're working on something, and just as you're barely getting into it and getting some flow and getting some progress, you get tapped on the shoulder and drop everything. Come over here and do this instead. And if this happens frequently, you're going to have a real hard time getting anything done. This is especially bad where you're in a situation where your team doesn't have control over what gets done in the sprint. And you can just have randos appear in your office and say, well, don't work on that, work on this instead of focusing just on the work you've agreed to do during that sprint time. So obviously you're going to have to either refuse that extra work or do a bad job on the work you agreed to. So obviously interruptions are bad. And yet, oh God, this slide. Poll question number 2. Are you frequently interrupted at work, my friends? Let's see, yes or no. Launch the poll, please. All right, vote. Well, we're at 80 to 20. And I think that's enough time. Everyone polled quite quickly there. So we're going to end the poll, share the results. Oh, failed to show error. Well, let's try sharing again. Do you guys see the poll results, Zuzi?
Fred, I do the sharing.
Oh, you do the staring. Okay.
You
So I'm
know,
going to get my hands off of there. All right, so it's 75-25. So three-quarters of you are saying that you are frequently interrupted at work. Well, now this is obviously a problem, right? And it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get your work done properly. So we've discussed the problem. How do you stop the interruptions at work? How do you get to a point where you can be like this Zen dog who has the peace and tranquility required to actually focus on what you're doing? Well, and this is where you've got to have the support of management, the strong team leaders, and if necessary, the ability to actually block off your time and say, look, between this hour and this hour, every single day, no interruptions, no exceptions. There are no emergencies enough to interrupt me from actually doing my job, please, right? Even if it's just 2 hours a day that you make sure that uh, you can work uninterrupted and just declare it and then defend it ferociously, you'll find that your productivity is going to skyrocket. And if you're a team manager, you should be hacking out huge chunks of uninterrupted time. No meetings, no phone calls, no requests, no interruptions, because that's the only way you are going to be able to actually get your work done. And if not, then you're not going to be agile because you're just jumping from one emergency to the next. It's like watching a children's soccer game. You know, when the 5-year-olds are out there playing football, soccer for you Americans, and the ball goes one way, and there's a group of kids running after the ball. Ball changes direction, same group of kids running after the ball, and everyone's just running after the ball, running after the ball, running after the ball, running after the ball, right? And that's how you're going to feel if you got those constant interruptions. So it's all right to stop that. Next, um, I think a lot of us have the titles of Scrum Master, Product Owner, Agile Team Leader, Agile Coach, Agile this, Agile that, Scrum this, Scrum that. But what it really comes down to is we're a bunch of sheep doing what we're told, right? We got the same budgets, we got the same schedules, everyone changed their job title, but everything's still the same. You know, we're still doing tasks in Jira that are defined during a design and requirements phase, and it's basically waterfall with a different name. And this, of course, is going to be like sticking a muzzle on a dog, putting the straight jacket on. You're just another one's pretending to be agile, but not really doing it. Sheep following orders. And poll number 3. And yes, it's all anonymous. Thank you for getting that poll going. Are we still doing agile? Hmm. So I'm saying that's a done poll. You want to share the results, please? Yeah, by a narrow margin, we can all agree we're still just doing agile, right? And that's unfortunate because the money and time and effort putting into doing pretend agile is far greater than actually doing real agile. And we have other presentations that I've been doing over the years talking about why it is that some organizations do this, why they do a masquerade of agile rather than the real thing. And it mostly has to do with fear, right? So you got to recognize that waterfall and agile have very different mentalities. And first and foremost, hey, not everything should be agile. I'm not impressed with the agile everywhere, everything attitude. There's a time and a place for agile. But when you have an actual agile environment where you've got the self-directing teams that are deciding amongst themselves, hey, what is next up on our backlog that we're going to work on uninterrupted and deliver, and that we're able to do this again and again and again and have genuine retrospectives without the managers sticking their heads in trying to listen to us, and we can actually speak openly and honestly. I mean, allow us to act like an agile team. And that means that the managers who are accustomed to having dictatorial authority and treating us like sheep have to change their behavior, right? As well as us changing our behavior. So when you recognize that you're in that waterfall environment, either you have to become a evangelist for helping other people to see the benefits of actually doing agile through your own behavior, or work with the management to explain to them the difference between genuine agile and not genuine agile, or maybe look for greener pastures, because you can starve to death. You could starve to death trying to do agile if you don't have the support of management. You could be left out on the street, a homeless dog, and there's nothing more pathetic than a mangy, starving dog on the street. And that's what happens when management uh, will give lip service to agility, but then doesn't genuinely support it. And that, of course, leads us to number four. Question number four: does top management support agility? And I see those numbers moving. Quite interesting. And I kind of would predict this result, which we will share shortly. At 30 seconds, I think we'll share it, right? We can predict that, yeah, a group like this at Agile 100, where you're able to take some time in your workday to attend a seminar online, a online conference, shows that your management does support Agile. And yet, even in this group, which is relatively privileged, there's almost 40% who don't believe that top management genuinely supports Agile. And this is a problem, right? Because especially when you're doing the transition to Agile, it's like planting a flower. If you don't give it extra love and attention, especially during the early times, it's not going to take root. It's going to wither and die. And it's the same thing in the Agile transformation, because a lot of top management is sold on Agile with the idea that it's going to save them money and things will be done faster. And frankly, that's not true. And nobody should promise that. And anytime I hear someone promising that, I get kind of angry, because generally, especially in the transformation phase, you're going to slow down, and it will probably cost more until you get the agile processes up and moving. Just like any kind of transformation, there's going to be transformation cost, transition cost, when you have sometimes two systems running together, and you've got to work the bugs out of the system. But they expect that, oh, we just flip a switch and it's going to be agile, and that's nonsense, right? So management not only has to support agile, they have to give you time and room and the food and nutrition and environment and permissions required to actually become a happy, agile practitioner who is well fed and confident and knows that he can trust the upper management for support. Because obviously, without that support, it always fails. Um, Just a few more here. This is my confused dog. This is a confused dog. And why is this poor dog confused? Because the user stories. I'm sorry, but the user stories, most of the teams I've worked with, they got minimal training on how to write user stories. And as a result, they're just writing JIRA tasks with putting user in front. And then you get ridiculous stuff like, as a user, I want to connect SQL Server to Windows Server in a Apache environment, ridiculous stuff that has nothing to do with telling a story of where we want to go, who wants to go there, why, giving the reasons why. And what are the acceptance criteria? How do we know that we're done? How do we know that it's good enough? Without any of that information, well, poor confused doggy, poor confused doggy, right? So let me ask you our next question, 5 out of 7. Are your user stories clear and complete? Interesting numbers moving here. A few more seconds to vote in the poll. Our user stories are clear and complete. And please, well, thank you. Confirming my long held suspicions. Nobody's got user stories that are as good as they should be, right? This is probably the number one thing that messes up Agile is you're only as good as your user stories. If you don't have good user stories, everything else doesn't matter how good you are at retrospectives or daily stand-ups or using your tools or anything else. If your user stories are crap, your product's going to be crap. And this, by the way, is something I strongly suggest that when you come back to training, if you've got your upper management support and they support training, this is probably the number one thing that people need training in because writing user stories is not natural and it's not easy. Without good user stories, things end badly. Whereas with good stories, we know what to focus on. We have an intensity, a clarity, and we know when we've got our teeth on the goal so that we can actually bring back, we can fetch that value. The sixth one is, in fact, do we have value? Are we actually focused on value? Or are we just locked in a cage, kind of blinded? Right? Are the backlogs actually sorted by value or are they sorted by politics? Are they sorted by whoever is going to yell the loudest and be the angriest or has the biggest role in the company? So, question number 6, do you prioritize your backlog by value? Now, this is encouraging. This is encouraging, seeing results like this, that you prioritize by value. So actually, we got a good 60% that actually prioritize by value. And this is so important because if you're prioritizing by something other than value, again, you're wasting your time. You're not agile. May as well just go back to being waterfall or go find another job, frankly, because it's only by delivering value that you get that love from your customers, that loyalty, that sincere gratitude that, wow, you actually understand me and give me what I want rather than just trying to sell me more crap with pop ups or some other ignorant thing. All right, final question. Can you say no? Can you say no? Right? Because we so many times are not in a position to say no. And when you cannot say no, you get abused. And when you get abused, you become nasty and you're certainly not going to be able to do your job. Right. So Can you actually say no? And again, this is really encouraging to see that we have here a majority of participants who can say no. And I would say that in many ways, this is of crucial importance because if you cannot say no at work, then you're not an employee, you're not a colleague, you're not a teammate, you're a slave, right? It's extremely important to be able to say no. It's only through the ability to say an honest no that you can ever get to a genuine yes, right? Because when you can say no, then you're also able to say yes. And that means having some freedom and choice and true agility, right? A truly agile dog is not the one who is, lorded over and whipped into shape and told, do this, do that. No, a really agile dog already knows how to be agile. Just need that love and encouragement to allow them to be what they can be, along with the training and support that they need. And then finally, I'd like to stop this talk by pointing out this is all a metaphor, right? You're not dogs. You're not dogs. And metaphors only go so far. I chose the dog metaphor because I want to be light and friendly and have something memorable. But you're not dogs. And if you're being treated like a dog, and I don't mean treated like a good dog, but treated like a bad dog, then go find another job, right? Sometimes we're reluctant. Sometimes we have that self-doubt. Sometimes we think that we just have to put up and take it. But in fact, we don't because our agility, our inherent ability, our qualities, the value that we can bring to this world deserves respect and support. And so if your agility is being, muzzled or leashed, or if you find yourself leashing and muzzling others, right? Let's find ways that we can stop doing that. So now I see Zuzi's ready. If there are some questions, I'd welcome questions on some perhaps, what is the motivation of the people putting on the leash and putting on the muzzle and putting on the sweater. When I put the sweater on Queenie, it's not because I hate her, right? So we could talk about that too. But don't feel obligated to stick with the metaphor of the dogs. It's just a metaphor, just a metaphor. Okay. Um, so that was my 30 minutes talk. So Zuzi, do you have some discussion and questions for me? Anything I forgot to mention?
I don't know what you forgot to mention, but I'm curious. I want to ask you how many times you left a job because you didn't feel treated well.
Um, More times than I would usually tell a recruiter.
So there are no recruiters.
I
So
I
can
I
you share some of
remember.
those stories? Like, why do you left? Without naming those places, of course, that's fine. But I would
Mhm.
like to hear some stories about this.
Yeah, I can specifically remember. It's going to be hard to describe this without giving away. It's a very famous company, and they were paying me okay, but they made promises of other support and equipment I would need to do my job, which in the end didn't ever happen. Though I was expected to deliver without the tools to do the job or the time to do the job, and where after my 3 month evaluation period, I get some regional manager who I've never even met before face to face. He's just been a voice on Skype calls. Never even seen his face before to give me my job evaluation. And that was a case where I said, whoa, 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 let me save you time. Actually, because this is a mutual thing, I've been evaluating you guys, and here's what you're doing wrong, and why it is I'm not going to work for you. You don't meet my standards. The guy was shocked, and one of the most memorable days of my life. I'm quite proud of doing that. I enjoyed it sincerely. So yes, I've done that. But it's usually not so happy, right? Because I got a kid and a dog to support and bills to pay and everything. So just walking away from job isn't something to do lightly. However, if you're in a situation where you really feel that you cannot walk away from your job, then you better start working on getting out of that situation, right? Um, that's one of the things that will lead to depression, to alcohol and drug abuse, to a short life and an unhappy family. If you're working at a job you hate, that you feel you're trapped into it, you'd be surprised how much of our self conception is built up on just driving after status, trying to impress other people, thinking like we've got a spotlight on us, everyone's watching us, and oh, if I mess up, everyone's going to laugh at me. No one cares. No one's looking. No one cares. Yeah. And if they're such jerks that they're going to treat you badly because you don't have as much money as you used to have because you're doing something that you think is more important, get those jerks out of your life anyways. Who needs them? I don't know if I answered your question, but I had fun
Oh,
talking.
you did. I have another one, right? There was a lengthy conversation on the Slack around if the top management or the management in general should be involved in your way of working or not. And I didn't see really consensus from that, but can you a little bit elaborate on it? I think you said something like they should support or something like this. So where do you see the role of a management?
So the question was whether top management should be involved in the day-to-day work.
In a way of working, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and how we work.
Um,
Where do
I
you see
mean,
it yes and where do you see it no, maybe? Where do you see the line?
right, because it's one of those yes no answers, isn't it? I mean, obviously they need to know what we're doing because it's their job to know what we're doing, right? Ideally, they have some experience in the stuff that we're doing so that they can give us advice. Otherwise, why are they our supervisors, right? If they don't know something special about the customer, if they don't know something special about our tools or technology or market or something like that, they shouldn't be managers, right? So obviously, yes, all top management from the CEO down ought to have day-to-day involvement in what we're doing. On the other hand, here's the no part, like, come on, man, leave me alone, let me do my work, right? Um, but when I was talking about support, it was more in the terms of genuinely providing the time and resources to have an agile transformation, to achieve agile objectives in an agile way, to not buy the expensive consultants who are telling you, oh, it's all about saving money and going faster. It is not, right? If their motivations for adopting agile, top management, if their motivation is to save money and move faster, well, then that means your job is under threat. Okay. They view you as an expense. You're just a tool to be a resource, a human resource, not a human, just a resource, right? To be burnt up and thrown away like firewood. If that's what they're looking for is do more with less, right? And frankly, they'll never be satisfied because Agile doesn't deliver more with less, at least not in the first, definitely not in the beginning. During the transition period, you're going to be delivering less for more money because it's a long-term process. And I'm glad to see Jurgen animatedly agreeing and disagreeing with me. This is why these things are so much fun. Um, so, but my experience is definitely during the transition, it's going to cost money. It's going to take time. They're going to have to shield the development team from customer complaints and doing all of the administrivia that they were accustomed to doing. The top management's got to give the support in the sense of, hey, we're having a transformation here. You can't use the same measurements, the same old KPIs in an agile environment. You can't expect the same outputs in the same ways. This is a different way of doing things, right? So that being the case, if they're not willing to shell out for that, then it'll probably be some, fragile water scrum or something like that instead of actually doing agile.
Can you share one advice for leadership to start supporting with unleashing agility?
Advice for leadership. Get out of the way. Get out of the way.
Mm-hmm. I like that one.
Get out of the way. That's it. I mean, if I'm trying to show my dog how to run and catch a stick, I'm just in the way. She knows much better than me how to do what she needs to do. So, I just need to literally unleash her and let her go. But not in the middle of the street, in the park, in a place where it's safe. So as the top management of how to have a agility, first, make it a safe place where agility is possible, right? And then take off the leash.
I have one more question from Stanislava here. What if I am afraid, as a coach, that more training, which was your point 1, works as an interruption of point 2? Any ideas how to avoid that?
Yeah. Actually, you train each other, right? This idea of each one teach one. In the military, because I have experience in the military. I was in a fighter squadron on aircraft carriers. No, I was not a pilot. I flew the computer. But yes, I am a deep personal friend with Tom Cruise, of course. Uh, the idea was that you're constantly showing the people around you how to do your job, right? Because at any time you might get blown off the flight deck and somebody will have to do your job because you're gone. You're floating in the Indian Ocean somewhere, right? So having a regular, weekly, rotating, team-based, each one teach one, where you're taking turns showing each other how you do your job, right? Here's what I do on a day-to-day basis. Here's how I make these things that I deliver to the team, that I share with all of you. And have that ongoing in a rotating way, because then you have some interchangeability possibilities of being an actual team that can swap roles as needed, right? And develop more and more as a team. So doing the internal training yourself within the team, you don't have to ask anybody's permission for that, and it doesn't cost you anything. And you set it for Friday afternoons, okay? You set it for Friday afternoons, like at 4:30 or something like that. And the person who is doing the teaching that week has to give the presentation. Everyone else can have beer and martinis and whatever else, right, while they're watching the presentation. So it's a little bit social. So that's how you start it off. Because you're right. If you're just training, then when are you going to get any work done, right? So if you've got no budget, you've got nobody else to give you training, start training each other, right? And then you'll see that the other teams around you are like, hey, what are you guys doing? And they'll want to join in. And then you can have a larger and larger circle of people training you. And that's going to be extremely valuable. Did I answer your question, Stanislava? Thank you.
Seems like yes. I have another one for you. Your last query was about ability to say no. And I know you've been living in many different cultures, working with many different societies. So can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because for certain cultures, it's super difficult. So how can you help people to say no?
Wow. Yeah, that's totally true. Like, so for example, I've spent some time in Southeast Asia where generally they won't say no because it's considered extremely rude. And so they'll say yes, but then they just won't do it. And for an outsider who doesn't understand the language and the culture, that can be infuriating, right? So for cultures where saying no is difficult, um, it's the no, it would be ridiculous for me to give advice on how to do that in your culture because that's your culture and you know far better than me how to say yes in a way that really means no. Sorry, no, I'm not qualified to give that advice. Um, I will come back on it another way. Um, Many times we need to say no politely and in such a way that the no is understood to be in the best interest of the listener, right? Of the hearer. Because it was Gandhi who said something to the effect of an honest no is worth 1,000 dishonest yeses, right? A yes makes you feel good, but ultimately you'll be sorry, right? Because you'll find out later that it wasn't sincere. So it's telling the no in terms not of no, I don't want to do this, but no, here's why it's not in your interest for me to be doing this, right? Presenting things in terms of opportunity cost, right? I could do that, but that means I won't be doing this thing. You're going to have to decide. You're the boss, right? Actually making explicit what the trade-offs are of the no, right? And what the consequences are of the no. Because sometimes it's a not now rather than a never, right? So explaining the no in terms of not now, here's how we put it into the backlog. Explain to them, here's how we assign specific value to each item in our backlog, and that's how you can get your requests up to the top quickly, is making sure that you explain how it's valuable to the users of the system, the people who are paying for it, the team that's creating it, right? And giving them the information to turn it into a yes, right? These could be some ways to get the no out in such a way that it's not as aggressive as sometimes it is, right? But I suspect that it's far more the opposite problem in most environments where you feel like if you say no, that you're going to get punished, right? So those of us who are managers, those of us who are more senior, who are leading teams, sometimes we conceive leadership being that nobody disagrees with you, right? Well, I think those of us who are older here will tell you that being in leadership means that everyone's disagreeing with you all the time if you're being an effective leader, right? You should have people who trust you enough to tell you, hey, Fred, this is a really bad idea, and here's why, right? Because your friends will tell you when something is a bad idea. So, being open to those no's and telling people explicitly, hey, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm suggesting that this might be something you should do, but I'm giving you the choice as a manager. That would be the mature thing to do. Um, I'm just looking at our time here to make sure I don't run out. Did
Yeah.
I answer your question, Susie?
Yes. And I have another one indeed,
Yes.
right? So, what was the most difficult learning, or most not difficult learning, but some sort of, in your life, there have been those moments where you've been struggling. So, what was the learning from one of those most difficult moments in your life?
Hmm. I've had a lot of difficult moments. Hmm.
Choose one.
maybe, I don't know if it was difficult, but I think it was important to me. I moved around a lot when I was young. And as a result, I went to three different middle schools. Middle schools in America are sixth, seventh, eighth grade, right? So, 10 to 13 years old, something like that. And holy cow. And as a result of this, the second middle school I went to, there was a guy who beat me up and I hated him and he was a terrible bully and everything. And then I transferred to another school, another city, and I saw a guy who looked exactly like him. Exactly. And I was like, oh, I'm staying away from him. I don't want nothing to do with that guy. I don't care. He reminds me of the and then through Boy Scouts, actually, turned out that the guy who looked like just like a twin brother of the bully was in my Boy Scout troop, and we ended up being best friends. Right. So be willing to be wrong. Being willing to be wrong. Right. To not let our first impressions, our first conclusion, put a barricade up, uh, and you know you don't even necessarily have to admit it and apologize. Just change your behavior, right? Because I didn't ever tell anyone about that. That just happened, and then I was like, oh wow, this guy's actually really cool.
Thank you for sharing. I really like Jürgen's cards. We should distribute them for all participants next time.
Make them mandatory for all future sessions that everyone must have those.
Don't follow him. So, Brett, thank you very much for sharing your insights and thoughts. Here is a feedback for the session, and then we have 40 minutes break, so you can stretch a little bit. That's always useful, walk around, but there are going to be the breakouts if you want to chat with similar-minded people. See you
All
back.
right, so I have to go get my son. So everybody, thank you very, very much for your participation. Thank you very much for answering the polls and paying attention to our little doggy. Please do let me know, or let Zuzi know, or Sohrab, if you guys think I should develop this talk further and do more. Okay? Because if so, then I'll use it elsewhere. Thank you very much, everybody.